Thank you for joining us on Relational Practice, a social work podcast. I'm Dr. Jodie Park.
I'm Rose Mackey, and we are both private practice social workers here in New South Wales, Australia. We work in the fields of child and family, and today we're recording this episode on Darrell country.
Oh, Rose, you changed our intro.
A little tiny bit.
That was tricky. Actually sounds good. Thank you for listening. We would love for you to subscribe, rate and review our podcast and connect with us on Facebook, Instagram and via our YouTube page.
Just on that, apologies. The videos for the last couple of episodes have not been put on YouTube. We've had some technical difficulties with our videos.
I think there's only one video that's not working though.
Yeah, but there's two that aren't on YouTube. I couldn't get self-harm podcast on YouTube either. But hopefully we will try and fix that in the coming days and at least get the audio up on YouTube. Everyone knows we're not good at tech. We're trying our best.
Because we know that some of you actually watch us, which I find absolutely frightening.
Disturbing,
but I'm glad. Don't stop. Tell your friends. Get more people to watch us.
Listen's good. I'm not sure why we need the video.
This was my thing all along, and then people said we needed it, and so now we do it. So now we're just going to do it.
We're just going to do it, but we don't love it. And you can all tell that.
Yeah, because we're a bit awkward. But we will sort that out. Okay, so please continue to watch us if that's your thing. All right, let's get back into this.
As always, please send us any questions, queries, concerns, practice stories, episode considerations to relationalpractice01@gmail.com or via any of our social media or our website.
As we say often, we love to hear from you. It's great. It's really great to hear from you. And we hear from lots of people, so thank you so much. All right. We are going to talk a little bit about memory.
What are we talking about?
Memory.
Oh, I was trying to be funny.
All right. No, you're hilarious. We are going to talk about memory, and we're going to kind of lead into what might be what impacts memory. Yeah. And I was trying to think about why we decided to do this subject because it seems like a random one.
Well, there was a reason to it. And as soon as you said it, I have this very strong memory that is clearly stored in the back of my brain, in my long-term memory.
Yeah.
Of you sitting in the witness box many years ago explaining to the magistrate and all the parties implicit memory.
Really? Was I right?
Well, it was the first time anyone had explained it in a way that I actually was like, 1, I didn't know everything that you'd talked about. 2, I could understand it. And 3, I thought, oh my goodness, how have I been practicing and I don't know this?
That's crazy that you remember that.
I remember that so well. And I think when we first started to share the office, I heard you talk about implicit memory at least once a month. And I'm like, oh, she knows what she's talking about.
Yeah, sometimes I just use a lot of words though. like a good social worker. I use a lot of words. It doesn't always mean I know what I'm talking about.
Well,
yeah.
I've been impressed.
Oh, Sarah, thank you. Thank you. All right, so we are going to talk about memory. And, we are talking about it from our very layman's perspective. As we say about lots of different things we talk about, we've kind of talked about the theories in relation to memory, and we have kind of adapted it to suit our own understanding.
Well, we've tried to make sense of it, right?
Yeah, the sense-making. Yeah.
So I think there's a bit of hesitation between both of us because memory is very complex. Understanding memory, talking about memory, I think is quite complex. But if you can get the basics, I actually think it helps in a therapeutic relationship with lots of clients to help them understand memory as well. But also from a practitioner's point of view, to understand, and we'll talk about this later, the impact of trauma on memory.
Yes.
And the 2 different types of memory. It can really help when you think about triggers for people. So sometimes, I know we've had a client in the office who was triggered by wet dog smell and for a long time couldn't understand why that triggered her. And I think when you understand memory, it kind of helps put some of those pieces of the puzzle together. And that's why we want to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So well said. Because the thing with trauma is that it actually changes the way your brain files memories.
Yeah.
And that's what you were saying. That's why it's so important to understand memory. Because I mean, trauma, we know trauma impacts on every absolute part of your life and your being. Yeah?
Yes.
Including the way we store, recall, and kind of, impact. Probably wrong word. But the way that we kind of use our memories in everyday life.
Yeah. And I think Bessel van der Kolk, when I heard him speak a few weeks ago, he talked about when we recreate a narrative around trauma, a traumatic event, how that is often a socially constructed narrative that often is not at all. We like storytelling to be kind of ordered and complete, and there's a start, a middle, and an end. And he was talking a lot around memory and the impacts of memory and how that's oftentimes not possible in relation to trauma. But as practitioners, as police officers, as people that work in the court system, a whole social kind of construct around, we need to be able to tell this very what's the word? Concise or considered. When you put things in order,
sequential.
That word, sequential story, to help other people understand what's happened, or to make a police report, to give evidence, whatever it may be. That often that's very difficult when we actually can understand how memory works, because memory is complex, and there are two kind of different types of memory we want to talk about today.
Absolutely. But it's also kind of like why some memories feel like they just happened, even though they may have happened years and years ago, because while some memories you completely forget.
Yes. And sometimes, so those memories you completely forget. So if I smell baby talcum powder, Johnson & Johnson brand specifically, that I have very little direct memories, I believe, of my grandmother, my time with my maternal grandmother, but I smell Johnson & Johnson's talcum baby powder, and I have all these sensations, and it's about comfort and feeling at ease, and it's because that smell reminds me of my grandmother. I might not be able to tell you the last conversation I had with her, I can't tell you what her hands look like, I have lots of memories of her, but a lot of that's driven by photographs, by other people talking about
it's the narrative.
It's the narratives that I've put together, but the smell will trigger me to think of and feel very much at ease. And that's because of how our memory is stored in two different kind of, I think, parts, filing cabinets, containers in our brain.
100%.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so let's get on to how memory actually works.
Well, should we talk about what memory is? What the two types of memory?
We're going to kind of get into that.
Okay.
Yeah. We will definitely get into that.
Cool.
All right, but let's talk about how it works. All right. I want you to think about your first day of school, or the moment you found out something truly shocking. Can you think about either one of those?
Well, let's not think about my first day of school because I didn't have the language.
So let's think about the first time something happened for you that shocked you.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yep.
Now I want you to think about what you had for breakfast today.
Yep.
And when you think about those two things, so the first thing, the thing that shocked you, and the second thing, what you had for breakfast, I'm guessing, I'm hoping they kind of present in your brain as kind of very differently. Do they?
Yep.
What's the difference?
Well, what I had for breakfast is an instant recall.
Yeah.
And I can tell you how I made my breakfast. Put the bread in the toaster first, then I got the butter, then I got the condiment, then I got the plate, then I can tell you the sequence of events. I can tell you who was in my kitchen. I can tell you the conversations I was having at the time. I can tell you the other noises that were happening. I can tell you what the dog was doing. I can tell you lots of detail about what happened this morning and what I had for breakfast. And all of that is pretty much a very big, boring story about my morning.
So when you think about the thing that that was shocking for you, do you have that much detail attached?
Don't have that much detail.
What do you have?
I have feelings.
Yes.
Feelings. I have, I think, a rough reconstruction of what I think occurred.
Yeah.
But I can't tell you any detail of the to and fro conversation. I can't tell you who else was there, but I have a lot of feeling about it.
And how long ago was it?
I was 14.
Okay.
So a long time ago.
A long time ago. So it's kind of amazing, full stop, that you remember that from when you were 14, because that was many years ago.
But I replay it often.
You replay it often. Okay, so it just kind of comes up.
Mm.
So it's a memory that's always in your file then.
Yeah.
That you replay. And do you sometimes replay it in a different way? Like, does it have different details? It might have the same feelings.
Maybe not very different details, but I replay it to try and make more sense of it and to try and see different perspectives now that I am older and I hopefully know more. Yeah.
And I think that is what actually happens with memories. We do replay those things that cause us to have an emotional response when the memory comes. We do recall it because it's always about trying to process what actually happened, but also the impact on us. Why is it a memory that we constantly think about? Why is it something that is so important to us that we actually try and process it constantly in a different way?
Yeah.
Whereas what you had for breakfast, instant recall because it just happened, but there was no emotions, even when you told the story.
No.
No emotions.
I mean, and it was a young breakfast, but
But I think that in essence is the difference in terms of the types of memories that we have and how they impact our lives day in, day out. Which is why this episode is so important. It kind of goes back to what you said at the beginning, that if we understand why there are such dominant memories that come up for people, and we understand not just what happened, because what happened, as you said before, we're always trying to reconstruct that narrative, but the feelings associated with what happened, and we focus on processing the feelings instead of so much the story. Then we can actually then help people to move on from that memory. The memory might never go.
Yeah.
It might always be there, but the feelings associated with the memory with good trauma processing will not be quite as rough.
Yeah, the lesson is
the word. Less intense.
Less intense is kind of the idea around it. And I think this is where systems that are trying to be helpful can kind of impact and complicate trauma processing for people. So you think about giving a statement to the police, giving evidence in court. That's very much about the narrative, all the details and in what order, and drilling down and having a very nice, neat timeline.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when victim survivors are in those systems, that complicates that trauma processing because people are so stuck on the putting this
on what happened, on
narrative together, the story, the exact details. And I think that can complicate and prolong trauma processing for people. And those systems are absolutely there to help people. But I think that's kind of a little bit of nuance we need to hold as practitioners and wonder and be curious how we can help people through that.
100%. But also people that kind of get stuck on different things that have happened in their lives and they replay it like it just happened, that tells you that they need some really, really good processing, and that whatever that experience was for them is still really real for them right now.
Yeah.
So they are responding to the event that may have happened 10 years ago, but their responses are here and now in real time.
Yeah.
So that's the other reason this stuff is so important, because if you're working with somebody, and it really does relate to PTSD, and that's kind of flashback stuff, which we'll talk about later. But if you are working with someone and they are really stuck, their current narrative is about stuff that happened in the past, then that tells you around what kind of intervention they actually need. Which is why I think this is so important. And I remember once doing, the first time I became really interested in memory was maybe 10 years ago. And I remember doing a care assessment, and it was for a grandmother, and she wanted to be the carer of her, I think it was I can't remember how many kids it was, 1, 2 little kids who had just been removed, placed in care. So she was seemingly like a functioning person in the family. She wanted to care for them. And I remember doing the assessment, going out and meeting her. There was no red flags at all prior to meeting her. But when I started talking with her, and particularly it wasn't even then. When I first started talking to her and it was about the child protection stuff, do you know what's happened to these children? That question you asked.
Yeah.
She was able to articulate what happened to her grandchildren, but very soon the story became focused on what happened to her. And the way that she relayed the story was like it was still here, like it happened yesterday.
Yeah.
And she was talking about childhood trauma, but she was also talking about a history of traumatic experiences that she'd had for probably the first half of her life. She hadn't had them for the last 10 years.
Yeah, okay.
But she had had them for a very long time before that. But they were so prevalent in her mind still. They were like, it was like, yeah, she was reliving it. And when she told me the stories, because I just let her go because it was fascinating. And when she was telling me the stories, it was very much like it was almost like she was on a stage and she was telling me this dramatic version of things that have happened in her life. I have no doubt that they happened, or that part of it happened and she was trying to process. The narrative maybe had got a little bit switched around, made more dramatic, whatever. But the thing is, the feelings that were attached were the thing that really interested me.
Yeah, and I think the feelings kind of have to be the focal point because as we know, the way we re-edit, retell, re-narrate trauma stories, you know, for lots of different reasons, are not a factual timeline.
They're not a factual timeline. But I think for this grandmother, it taught me that she was her experiences were still so real for her, that she was still so actively traumatized.
Yeah.
That it was really difficult to then put small children in her care. And that was really the argument I had to make in that carer assessment.
That's a really, you know, massive ethical dilemma, isn't it? You've got a grandmother legislation here in New South Wales supports family placements first above all else, you know, and there's so many different things to consider, but she's got all of this trauma and she's giving you, you know, sharing her history, which is brave and hard. And then as an assessor, you're saying, I'm not sure how them placing 2, 1, 3 kids who also have trauma experiences with this lady is going to be good for the children, but good for her either.
100%.
And that's often really hard to read and accept, I think, as practitioners.
It was really hard. It was really hard for the service to
understand
the arguments I was trying to make, which told me that I needed to make better arguments that were actually easier to understand. But also, because of what you just said, she was presenting as quite together, but nobody had ever actually explored her history.
Yeah.
And her history was huge. And I'm not saying that if someone's got trauma in their history, we shouldn't be looking at them here and now for different things. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying if someone has a huge history of traumatic experiences and they have engaged in some really strong trauma processing, they have actually done some work on that. So there is some distance between what happened then and the now. That's very different. But
so different.
But for this lady, it was like it was a mesh. The past and the present were the same for her.
Yeah. And I think this is where, you know, we have maybe nothing to be thankful for Hollywood when they talk about childhood trauma in movies and, you know, wounds from the past, because you know, there's all of this language around childhood trauma, you know, what's your mother injury, what's your father wound, all of that stuff. But it actually is quite real and relevant, and we need to understand it because what happened in our past can impact our present, and in different ways, absolutely. But how do we make sense of it, understand it, process it? How do we know the impact that we're bringing in from childhood to present day?
And as practitioners, how do we understand what that means?
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah. And means for whatever your kind of work context is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that's kind of when I really got interested in memory. And from that, you would have, obviously, it sounds like you've heard me bang on about it a bit, Rose.
Definitely.
Yeah. God, you must just hear me say so much stuff.
Well, but you know, when I don't know things and you know, use your words, I think, oh, what's that about? And then I listen, and then sometimes I get really interested. Sometimes I think way above my intellect. Let that go. Jodie, can you explain that further? I do.
Sometimes you just think, honestly, Jodie, shut up.
Well, sometimes I think that too, yeah.
Yeah, I would too.
We all think that about each other all the time.
I was going to say, well, everyone thinks that about me.
No, but you think that about me too.
Never. Never. All right, let's move on to what are the 5 stages of memory. So the first stage is around observation. So we engage with the world through the 5 senses.
Love this.
Yep. So through sight, hearing, taste, smell, touch.
Do you know, I was driving in this morning
Yeah.
thinking, I can see, I can hear, I can smell. I was like, oh, you can taste. And then I was like, what's the other thing? And I'm doing this, touching. Why is it so difficult for me to recall 5 senses off the top of my head? Anyway, continue.
No, but since you really talked about how important the senses are in memory recall when you told the story of your grandmother.
Yeah.
And the smell, and that brings up memories. And that happens so often. It happens to all of us.
Yeah.
That there are some senses or all of the senses or one or 2 of the senses attached to something that has happened, and that helps with memory recall.
Yeah.
Okay, so another stage is called encoding, which is around the formation of memory, and that's around registering the sensory inputs and attaching them to thoughts and feelings in the brain. Make sense?
Does.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it makes sense because it kind of needs to be connected.
Yeah.
And the other stage of memory is around storage, which is around consolidation retention. And that's where you stabilize encoded content into short-term, then long-term memory. So that's kind of the filing stuff.
Yeah.
It's how we file memories, short, long-term.
And I always go, oh, it's here. And then when it comes long-term, and I say this with kids, I'm like, and then it sits back here. I have no idea because it sits in our, can't even remember the word of the brain where our long-term memory sits. And then I think, oh, Rose, I don't even know if that's where it is in the brain. But I always point to the back, filing cabinet right at the back, long-term memory, it's in there.
It makes sense that it would be right at the back. All right, next stage of memory is around retrieval, which is recall, so bringing memories back to awareness. And that can be kind of either actively or passively, but it's also around, and this is where implicit memory, which we'll talk about in a little bit, it's also about those kind of memories that are conscious and unconscious. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I talk about that all the time. And I think that's kind of like an accepted thing now. We all understand that we have conscious and unconscious, not really parts of us, I guess maybe parts of us, but conscious and unconscious thoughts, conscious and unconscious feelings, and these all kind of contribute to, I guess, our everyday functions.
Yeah.
And then there's the last stage is around reaction, and that is around the kind of physiological but also cognitive part of memory. I think it's more linked, but please, people, you know me, I'm not an expert. Tell me if I'm wrong. But I think that's around that kind of making sense of the memory once we can kind of recall it.
Okay.
Does that make sense? What do you think?
I'm just thinking, how clever are our brains?
Yeah.
And for our brains to be this clever as a species,
Yeah.
why do we as humans not do more
Yeah.
to better the world than what we're currently doing? Because that's fascinating. Like, how clever.
It is fascinating, but I also think I'm wrong because I think it is around the kind of the physiological and cognitive attachments to memory recall, but I actually think it's also to the formation encoding stage as well.
Okay.
Where we kind of attach stuff to the memory. So to the thing that happened, we attach feelings, we attach thoughts to that, and then we can retrieve them. But then, as we've talked about, during that retrieval process, the story might become a little bit different. So the thinking might become a little bit different. That's attached to it.
Yeah.
But the feelings usually remain the same. Yeah.
That makes more sense.
Does it make more sense?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. All right. Now I'm going to get technical. Well, as technical as I can actually get.
Can't wait to hear you say these terms.
I've been practicing.
Tell me.
All right.
Tell me about my hippopotamus.
Hippocampus?
Yeah, I always think when I'm with kids, I think hippopotamus. Hippocampus? That's what makes me think of the hippocampus. I have to think about a hippopotamus first.
Yeah, right.
Isn't that weird?
I just never think about the words attached to the brain stuff. Like, you just never do.
I love talking to kids about their
Well, then maybe you could talk about this.
Their big
All right.
brainstem.
I'm actually just going to read it because otherwise I'm like, I'll just butcher it and I don't want to massacre this information. So I'm just going to read it.
What's with the language?
Oh, what do you think? Butcher and massacre?
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think about that language?
Let me think about it as you're telling me. Let me see let me just fix it.
All right. The brain structures involved. So the hippocampus is the brain's memory filing center. It helps turn short-term experiences into long-term memories. Yep.
It's like this is how I think about it. Your short-term memory goes through a chute, through the hippocampus, and lands in your long-term memory system.
I think that's a great way to think about it. I think that's a really good way to think about it. So implicit memory develops before explicit memory. So implicit memory really is the unconscious stuff that happens. It's unconscious memory formation. Just remember that in your
And it
head.
develops first.
It develops first. Explicit is actually conscious memory formation. But
Things that we can verbalize.
Yeah.
That's how we know it's explicit.
Yeah. There's a lot of, and I don't want to jump here, but I'm going to. But there's a lot of research that talks about implicit memory happening pre-verbal. So kind of when trauma happens for children and they don't have the language or the cognitive functioning to understand it. So it's that kind of that very early year stuff. It gets stored in the brain as an implicit memory and then presents as an emotional response.
Yes. Because the research says that our explicit memory develops in the second year of life.
Yeah. So before that, things that happen get stored in the brain still. It's not like it doesn't happen. It just goes nowhere.
They're just stored differently. They
They're
don't
stored
disappear. They're stored in other parts.
But they present differently as well.
Yes, because the language wasn't there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, implicit memory develops before explicit memory. We just said that. Explicit conscious recall depends on development of the hippocampus in the second year of life. We just said that too. And pre-verbal implicit memories do not disappear when the hippocampus develops. They are stored differently. Rose just said that. I just repeated everything Rose just said. The amygdala. Yeah, I was practicing it. Is the brain's alarm system. It tags memories with emotions, particularly fear and threat, and it is always asking, is this dangerous? Yep. Another brain structure is prefrontal cortex. This is the thinking, reasoning part of the brain. It helps us make sense of what happened, put memories in order, and regulate our emotional response. And the three parts of the brain work together constantly. So when things are going well, they're a great team. But under extreme stress, the relationship breaks down, and that is when things get really complicated.
Yeah. And our amygdala, our siren, and when I talk with children, I talk about a red siren, and it takes over everything.
Yeah.
That's when it starts to break down and they no longer work because the amygdala is so, it's driving then.
Yeah.
When it's not feeling safe, it's observed, felt threat, it takes over. And the longer and the more we can help everyone, individuals, understand keeping our prefrontal cortex online, the better able we are to actually rationally think and use our cognition. But once that amygdala starts, that's when we start seeing those three parts of our brain not working well.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Because your brain becomes so focused with survival.
It's what we're wired to do.
That's
survive.
Right. How do I survive this experience?
Yeah.
Am I safe? Am I not safe? Constantly kind of being hypervigilant and flagging. All right, so 2 main types of memory. We have kind of talked about this already. Explicit memory, what people usually mean when they say memory. We know it. We can talk about it. It requires focused attention to consolidate. So that's kind of interesting. Because you kind of just think memory just happens.
But you think about, when I think about what I had for breakfast, I thought to the end product, and then I had conscious thought to go back. And put it into a timeline and a sequence. Yeah.
So there are 2 subcategories to explicit memory. The first one is semantic memory. So that's like cold memory, facts and information. Yep, like a shopping list.
Yep.
Yep, when you can recall things on your shopping list.
What's that called?
Semantic.
So not somatic, not to be confused with
semantic.
Semantic, yes.
And the next one is around episodic memory. So that's kind of warm and textured, and it emerges spontaneously and kind of infused with feeling and vitality. So that's when we kind of have the warmth added to the facts when you're telling your story, because you need to have both things when you're telling your story. So the narrative gets enriched, not just with the facts of what happened, but kind of you then start to put on layers of emotions. What does that look like?
I just think it's fascinating. Don't you?
I do.
Because when you think about people retelling stories and you think about bias and lens and all of that, we all emote when we're retelling stories, but we don't often talk about it or understand then the impact it has on us when you're just listening to someone else share their story, because the emotions are attached.
Well, and a story, someone telling a narrative where there are strong emotions attached, make the narrative more interesting.
Absolutely. That's where you're like, and tell me more. Or you're like,
Absolutely.
not speaking because you're like, oh
Yeah.
my goodness. Yeah.
And so good storytellers have the know-how, I guess know-how for want of a better word, to be able to use emotion to their advantage.
Yeah.
And that's what makes them good storytellers.
Yeah. I just think that's fascinating.
Yeah, same. So implicit memory, we talked about this already, but I'm just going to talk about it again. It's encoded outside of awareness, largely pre-verbal and non-verbal. Yeah. Cannot be put into spoken words. There are two subcategories. Emotional memory. This is experienced directly in the body as physical sensations. It's kind of interesting. Helps us connect with and signal our feelings and needs, often triggered by environmental cues, smells, sights, sounds, or situational cues, anniversary, milestones, birthdays. So things that we remember and which makes sense. We've talked before about, during life story work, doing some planning around significant events.
That's why that as a strategy works really well for
really
children and young people and probably adults.
Really well, because their implicit memories are triggered by anniversaries or significant dates, and if they present as emotions, then it's kind of why you get such big emotions around significant events.
Yeah. And if we can be prepared for it, we know they're coming, we can understand the way our memory works and that this is all a result or likely a result of that, then we're better prepared as carers, parents, friends,
100%.
therapists, whatever.
So the other form of implicit memory is around procedural memory. And that's just where we know how to do things. Our body knows how to do things.
Drive a car, ride a bike, these sorts.
Well, we have to learn, but
But once we've learned.
Well, once we've,
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. They become hardwired responses to different things. So we just know how to do them. We don't have to think about them. You don't have to attach cognition to something.
Yeah, maybe not drive a car then if we don't have to attach cognition to it.
Yeah, but it's the stuff that you just learn how to do. You just know how to do. I think ride a bike is a great example.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because and people say you never forget how to ride a bike.
Yeah. That might be a very Australian thing. Maybe it's ice skate in other parts of the world. I don't know. It depends on your context. But in Australia, I feel like riding a bike is a very good example of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's really interesting that there is some kind of some work that was done in like 2014, 2015 that kind of talked about, I'm talking about some research work that kind of talked about how we largely only refer to memories in terms of explicit memories, which is what you were saying before, and implicit memories, and the importance and the function of implicit memory is often overlooked.
Who did that research?
Let me see. We've got Levine 2015. We've got Brandon McEwen 2014. We can put these references in our show notes. But that's really kind of interesting and makes so much sense, doesn't it?
It does.
We care about what happened. We care about the facts. We care about the story. But we don't often think about, or what is the interplay between the explicit and the implicit.
Yeah.
Memory when we're kind of talking about the narrative that you're talking about right now. Yeah. All right. So then why do some memories stick and some others fade? And really the general view is that emotion supercharges memory formation. So memories that are attached to very strong emotions will often hang in there. They're the robust memories.
And I think it's interesting when I think about it in this context. So if you're maybe working with a parent and an adolescent, and the parent has this very good recall of an incident that has happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it seems, like it was a lot. And, I'm thinking specifically when you're doing maybe therapy with a young person and the parent carer shares, and this happened last month, and you get this big story. You can, all the feelings and all the things, right? And then times when you speak to the young person about the same incident, and it's like, oh, what?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, yeah, no, and I guess that happened, but that have none of the emotion attached to it. It's like talking to two people that were at the same place at the same time, and one has all of these emotions and the other, and vice versa. It also happens when the young person is, this happened, and the parent's like, what? Oh, yeah, but, and that's when I find it fascinating to think about this stuff, because the emotion where it tells you something about what you need to do in your job.
Yeah. And I like the fact that I like thinking about that, the example in terms of that kind of that emotions do supercharge a memory.
A memory, absolutely.
And that word supercharge, I think, is, I don't know, that's a made up word. Is that a word, supercharge? I guess it's two words joined together, compact word. But anyway, I'll bring myself back.
Social worker, not English lit, not English anything.
But that's kind of the way that I remember why that might happen, because I think about the emotional content attached.
Yeah. And then for me, so with that, say, parent carer, what is it about those emotions that, is driving your need for this to be discussed in therapy? Is it really about the child, young person? Is this about you? Is this about something else? Because the child's like, huh? Oh.
I mean, I guess, kind of stuff that I've read about memory says that when the amygdala becomes involved, then it's automatically going to supercharge the emotion because it flagged it as important.
Yeah.
Because your body stress response became involved in the formation of the memory.
Yeah.
So that's always going to supercharge it.
So it's fascinating.
It's absolutely fascinating. But other memories that may not have felt like survival at the time, but something traumatic still happened, just say, you're walking down the street and you watch a car accident happen in front of you. Your survival mechanism might not be triggered. You might not be triggered on that survival level because you kind of can see it's over there and it's not here.
Yeah.
But then emotion supercharged that memory for you.
Yeah.
So there's two ways, I think. People will correct me if I'm wrong, but there's two ways that I think that emotions can become supercharged. And it always goes down to the memories attached.
I would agree.
Sorry, to the feelings attached.
To the feelings.
Yeah. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Did that make sense?
Yep.
Thank God. All right. Okay. So when something really bad happens, your body's survival response kicks in, shifts into survival mode, stress hormones flood your body. I know we're getting very technical, aren't we, on this episode?
Stress hormones.
The stress hormones flood your body. Your heart rate goes up, your breathing changes, your attention narrows. You become focused, super focused.
Focused on the danger and
on
then
the danger.
And your body's working out how you survive in it.
Yeah.
And your body and brain working together. Yep. But
in that state, it's brilliant for survival, but it's not always great for forming clear, organized memories. So it's kind of interesting because then when we go back to what you said before, and particularly from a legal perspective, the focus is always on what happened. What are the facts?
Yeah.
What happened here? But if we know that when our body is flooded with those stress hormones, we can't always recall the things that happen in that sequential kind of order, this, then this, then this, then it's almost, it's so unfair, isn't it, to expect people to be able to recall traumatic events in such a sequential way when we know it kind of goes against what the body does.
Absolutely. And you think it needs to be sequential and then drill down into the very specific details about so many things. We ask a lot of victim survivors.
We really do. We really, really do. Because the other thing that is happening when trauma happens is that, and you talked about this before, we are always trying to make sense of it. So we're constantly trying to process it.
Yeah.
But there does become a point forget I said that. The way that we process it is by trying to make sense of it. So in that way, we can change the narrative because we have to sometimes change the narrative for it to make sense. Yes. So the recall of the actual incident might not actually, we know, cannot be 100% accurate because you've got all these things kind of working at the same time.
Yeah. I do want to say, though, like we know memory is reconstructed. So no memory is the exact replica of the prior experience.
No.
And retrieved memories are subject to change every time they're recalled.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it's necessarily unreliable.
Oh, God,
Just
no.
need to make sure that
course.
that's clear.
Of course.
Doesn't mean it's unreliable.
No, because something happened.
Yeah.
That's why this whole process became enacted.
Yes.
Something happened. And I think about from a legal perspective, because even while I was just saying what I said before, I was thinking in my mind, yeah, but that's all we have from a legal perspective. That's the way the legal system works. And so it doesn't mean that that's wrong.
No.
But it does mean that does put a lot of pressure on victim survivors.
It does, because it's about reasonable doubt. And that is how you get reasonable doubt.
Yeah. But it's also, it makes perfect sense as to why our conviction rates, particularly for things in crimes against children, are so low.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
They're the perfect victims.
Yeah, perfect victims. All right. I just want to really briefly talk about the role of sleep. So sleep is actually really important when we think, I know you look at me like that, but sleep is really important when we think about memory. Because what happens when we sleep is that, particularly during REM sleep, REM, is it REM or REM?
Oh, I say REM, but I might have just made that up.
I'm thinking of the band REM.
REM.
I'm singing in my head now. But particularly during REM sleep, is that the brain while we sleep is trying to actually make sense of the things that happened during not only that day, but they're just trying to kind of work through different things.
Yes.
So some of that filing that happens in our brain, the memory filing, actually happens when we sleep.
Yeah. I think about our sleep time as the system taking over and going, you can go here.
Yeah.
It's like cleaning the tabs, right? At night time, it's shutting down the numerous tabs that are open. And I laughed when you said sleep, because this morning my watch told me that I had very poor quality sleep last night. I had no REM or REM sleep. I had no continuous sleep more than 40 minutes, and I had no continuous sleep. And I said to my watch this morning, well, aren't you rude?
Were you excited about doing this today?
Goodness,
that you're excited
I
about.
was so excited.
Excited about recording.
I don't know what was happening, but I also think I'm now very attached to every morning looking at my watch and it telling me how great or not great my sleep was. And I have a chuckle because I then think, is this going to determine my day?
Yeah, does it determine your day?
I think it does to an extent. It's wild.
It's absolutely fascinating. So because you have invested so much into what your watch tells you, cognitively then you've attached a lot of meaning to that.
Yep. And when it tells me that my body battery is, once it's told me it was 100, I was like, yes! I was so pumped. I'm like, this is going to be the best day. I should be energized. All these things. And then half an hour later, I was like, I think the watch lied. I don't feel amazing. You would think if your body battery was 100, you'd be on top of the planet. This morning when it told me my body battery was under 50.
Really? How do you feel today? How do you feel right now?
I feel like I feel most days. This is just life. But I do place such significance initially, and then I have to work hard to be like, Rose, come on.
So it tells you automatically, your brain has this narrative because the watch tells me I'm going to have a great day or I'm not going to have a great day.
I'm going to be so tired and so chaotic and disordered, and it's going to be an effort to get through this day.
It's not interesting.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
But I wondered last night, I didn't have great sleep, and I know I didn't, not just my watch, I feel it. But I think tonight, does my sleep need to work doubly hard to close those tabs and order the files? Like what happens? And then over time, if you've got consecutive months, years of poor sleep, like how impactful is that then?
Hugely impactful, because how can it not be?
Because your body can't, it's kind of like this sorting process, isn't it? And if you can't get that sleep, you can't do that.
Well, it's almost like you would kind of get stuck. You would get stuck in this kind of cycle of, just feeling, I guess it would almost be like feeling like your brain and your body's working against you.
Yeah, I felt that before.
Yeah. I think that's how it would feel. That's how it would feel. Let's talk about intrusive memories and flashbacks, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So an intrusive memory is an unwanted, distressing memory that shows up without you choosing to remember it. It might come as an image, a sound in your head, a body sensation, a smell, or a sudden wave of emotion that seems to come from nowhere. So an intrusive memory, and we know intrusive memories are attached to trauma. We know intrusive memories are attached to lots of different things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it can become a narrative, like an established narrative that we then tell ourselves.
Yeah.
A flashback is more intense. It's when the memory feels so real that it's like it's happening now, or it's just happened.
Yeah.
So it's kind of described as a person momentarily believing and acting as if they're back at the time of the traumatic event.
Can intrusive memories cause flashbacks?
I mean, I don't know the answer to that. Someone out there will probably know the answer to that. I don't know if that is the case, but I know that you can have both at once.
Right. Yeah.
So you can be experiencing intrusive memories and you can then be experiencing flashbacks. And then you can kind of get on a bit of you can then experience that kind of loop thinking.
Yeah.
Because that then leads to your cognition, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And the stories you tell yourself. And you can then get stuck in a loop.
Yeah.
Which cycle, because then you're stuck in a loop, and we know that I've talked before about the link between what we think, how we feel, and then how we behave. So if you're stuck in a cognitive loop that's been triggered by an intrusive thought or a flashback, then your body's going to start responding. Your emotional functioning is going to start responding to the cognitive kind of what's the word I'm thinking of? The cognitive thing that's happening, and then your body's going to start responding.
Yeah, which is possibly I'm under threat. I'm not safe.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah. All right. Which kind of leads us to why the brain can't timestamp trauma properly.
Oh, I like that wording.
Yeah. I don't know if I can claim that. I'm pretty sure I read it somewhere. So in a normal memory, there is a clear sense that something happened in the past and you know it's a memory. So you know it happened before. Yep.
Yeah.
But the thing around, well, if it makes sense, think about if you're having a flashback or an intrusive memory. The time, the tense part of time gets really confused.
Well, because it feels like it's happening now.
That's right. It feels like it's a now thing. Yeah. Which is why that lady I talked about, that grandma, it's why she was so actively traumatized, because she couldn't work out the tense of the stories that she was telling me.
Yeah.
Like, I think on some level cognitively, because she was attaching it to when I was 12 this happened, but emotionally
it was
now.
And that's why it might seem dramatic for you listening, but to her so reasonable, because it's happening now. The emotions are now.
Yeah. Which I think goes back to when we started this kind of episode and we were talking about why this is so important. I think that is why this is so important.
Yeah.
Because we might be dealing with someone in the here and now that we know had traumatic experience or had a series of traumatic experiences, some time back. And we might not expect that to be impacting them so greatly now. We know there'll be some impact because we know that's what trauma does.
Yeah.
But if we then need to be thinking about, well, what is the impact? How great is that impact right now? I think that's the question to ask ourselves. How great is the impact now?
Yeah.
Because we know it is going to have an impact.
Absolutely. And if you think in a parenting context, that impact, maybe that was a better argument to write about in your assessment. Maybe you did or not, but maybe that would have helped the organisation understand your worries.
I mean, I've had a few assessments where I've talked about things and I've had people ring me and go, I don't understand what you're saying. And I sometimes want to say it sounds like a you problem. To be honest, I do. Because
I love your honesty. So refreshing.
But it's true. I sometimes think to myself, why is my job now to teach you how to understand stuff you should already know? That actually is not my job.
It's a fair point.
But in other situations, I do have to take that on board and I do have to think about, okay, well, I need to write things differently.
Yeah.
Because the message is getting missed.
Yeah.
Which is why I think more recently I've changed that a little bit. I've stopped doing it, but I went through a period of time, and I think I need to get back to this, where I just wrote things very, very clearly, in like almost to the point where I felt like it was like in your face. Because I was sick of the messages getting missed.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's all right. I think sometimes that's the kindest thing to do, to just be very, people would call it blunt, but just direct and straightforward with it. There's a kindness in it, I think.
Is there?
I do.
Next time someone says something to me, I'm going to say, my friend Rose actually says that I'm being kind to you right now.
I actually think if you actually think about it, it is kind. It might not feel good. And I had someone say to me this week, "You're making me feel very uncomfortable." And I said, "Yeah, that's okay though."
Yeah.
And she said, "It is not okay." And I said,
Mm-hmm.
"It's actually part of life, feeling uncomfortable. And when we're uncomfortable, it's actually where we grow the most, we learn the most. I'm really sorry you're feeling uncomfortable, but I'm only being very open and honest and transparent with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how else to do this." And I thought, should I fluff it up? But I couldn't.
So how did that then end?
Well, kind of because it started with, "Don't treat me like a child, don't treat me like I'm vulnerable." And I'm like, "You've asked for this." And I wasn't elevated, I wasn't using rude, like I was absolutely just being very honest, but without any, I wasn't harassed, I wasn't feeling stressed, I wasn't doing any of this. I was speaking really calmly, very factually.
Yeah.
And I brought it back to, you asked not to be treated like a child. You asked not to be treated like you were vulnerable. If I was talking to a child, I would not have said this. You asked, and this is an adult, you asked for me to be honest. I said, "I know it doesn't feel good, but it doesn't take away from what I'm telling you." It can feel horrible. It can feel hard to hear, but it doesn't mean that it's actually not worth listening to, not worth thinking about. So, but because it feels uncomfortable, I'm going to write down the 3 points that I think are most important. I'm going to leave them here on this Post-it note. You're going to think about it, I'm quite sure. And I thought she was going to loop and loop and loop on this. And when you want to talk about it, ring me back. Or if you want to talk to someone else, at least you've got the 3 points here.
That sounds like you left it in a great place.
I mean, I could have been fluffy and gone around and avoided or made it, oh, well, and I do that sometimes. But I was like, well, this is the 5th time you've asked me to be honest and not treat you like a child. Okay, I'll tell you.
Well, I think sometimes you have to be fluffy. And I think that's the difference between a good practitioner and maybe someone who is also uncomfortable in being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because if you're someone who is okay with being uncomfortable, you know when to be fluffy, you know when to not be fluffy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know when the other person needs you to respond in a certain way. But I think if someone was to say, someone was to say to, I don't know, someone who might not like being uncomfortable, "You're making me uncomfortable," they would instantly be like, "Oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to do that, blah, 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 blah."
Yeah.
And go over the top.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's useful.
No, when she said, "What? You're making me feel," no, this is making me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then, "You're making me feel uncomfortable." I said, "Can you tell me, Hannah?" She said, "What you're telling me." I said, "So what I'm telling you is making you uncomfortable?" She said, "Yes." I said, "It makes me uncomfortable too."
Yeah.
I said, "Because I know you don't want to hear this.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to hear it either. So I'm a little uncomfortable too. I get it. But being uncomfortable is okay." And she was like, "Well, it's not." I said, "It actually is. We need to learn how to be uncomfortable."
I wonder how she's processed being uncomfortable in the past.
I wondered that too.
Yeah, interesting.
But I also I wondered if you're telling me you're feeling uncomfortable as a way to shut the conversation down too. Is that your strategy for not having to have this conversation? I wondered that too, because she has said it, and I've worked with this person for a while. She said it a few times before, and I have kind of backed off or changed my approach. And I have been thinking about it for the last 3 months, thinking I actually think it's a strategy and I'm going to test it, a way to deflect or shut down the conversation. And there are some conversations that no matter how uncomfortable, and this was one of them, we just had to have.
I mean, it's a good strategy, isn't it?
A great strategy.
For that reason I said before, because I'd say a lot of people aren't comfortable with being comfortable.
Yeah.
Uncomfortable, and they would activate fluffy.
And if you think about being a people pleaser, which I am at times, absolutely. Oh my gosh, you're uncomfortable. Let me bend over backwards to now make you comfortable. It's works when you telling a people pleaser uncomfortable, but it also is great to just shut down things.
100%.
You know, sometimes that can be very helpful, but there are situations where you just actually have to be very blunt, make people uncomfortable. But it was kind, because I was like, you have actually now very clear factual information about what is going to happen to you. And if I'd shut the conversation down, I don't know how I would have given it to her. So I do think it's kind. Sometimes it's kind to be.
Do you know what that
direct.
was? It was compassionate empathy. I've been using that so often since we did that empathy episode.
Yeah.
That was like mind blown for me. If you haven't listened to our empathy episode, listen to it.
Yeah.
Rose blew my mind.
It was actually compassionate empathy.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just think, I'll speak for myself, I see lots of people that go out of their way not to have real conversations because it makes people uncomfortable, and I don't think that's kind.
It's not kind. No, it's not kind. Not kind at all. All right, shall we keep going?
Yep.
All right.
Memory.
Why trauma memories can be incomplete or missing entirely. I think this is really important in our work. So gaps in memory are very common after trauma. It's not something that people have made up. It is neurobiology. So when a person is overwhelmed, the brain can shift into dissociation. And we've talked about dissociation.
We have.
Which makes so much sense, doesn't it? So things just happen around them, but the person, the lights are on, but nobody's home. So the memory is not actually being the stage of the memory that actually is, what's the word? I've forgotten my own words. Whatever that stage of the memory was I said before, where we are actively engaging in whatever is happening so that we can file it away.
It doesn't
It's
get
not
to
happening.
happen.
It's not happening.
But what is happening is those sensory things often. So maybe a smell, the way it feels, what we've heard, fragments of what we've heard, things we've tasted.
Yes.
What's the other sense? Say I'm missing one.
Touch? Yeah. Did you say touch?
Yes. Smell, taste, I don't know, whatever. But all five senses, sometimes they're, and I kind of imagine this as like floating around, and we can kind of grab a bit of this and a bit of that of our senses, but it doesn't always make sense, which is how I think it gets then lost, because we don't get to file it away because we haven't had the whatever the word is, which would be helpful to know.
It's okay, we don't need it.
But maybe the smell is something that we store.
Well, absolutely. And it gets stored as an implicit
Memory, yep. And then we've got, that smell.
Yep.
Absolutely.
This is just a little, I found this little quote, and I didn't write where it came from, but it wasn't mine, but I really like it. And it is that healing doesn't mean forgetting traumatic events. Healing means more confidence that you'll be able to cope with your memories and symptoms. You'll be better able to manage your feelings. That's the whole point of trauma processing.
Yes. So I don't know, many episodes ago I spoke about a young girl I worked with who couldn't drive from her home to a shopping centre, and worked out it was because of a particular street that we were driving down, and there was a very traumatic domestic violence incident that involved her on this street. Yeah. And so we worked around that. I don't know what episode that was, we talked about it, but that was, and which is why I asked if you can have a flashback and an intrusive memory at the same time, because I actually think that's what was happening. It was an intrusive memory as they're driving down the street, and then flashback because she had very big. Yeah. She was in the car, like hyperventilating.
It was like it was happening for
her right hand, which is why I asked that question. Can you have that? Does it lead to? But I think you answered it. You can have both at the same time.
Let's hope I'm right, but I think you can.
Well, I think because this person definitely is what I was thinking. Over time of working with her, she can drive to this shopping centre now, not the same route like streets, but she had attached the feeling to the shopping centre as well.
Right.
So over the course of 12 months, this amazing carer has been able to get this young person to this shopping centre, driving down some of the same roads, not that specific road, and it still creates a reaction from her, but that reaction has lessened. And this is not exposure therapy. This is not what we're doing, but through trauma processing and different trauma-informed interventions, the young person, because this shopping centre is a cool place to go, has cool shop, wants to go there, she can actually get to the shopping centre now. And that, to me, is kind of the recovery. That
100%
doesn't mean that it's a great trip for either of them.
No.
But she can get to the shopping centre now and she can actually stay and have time there, get what she needs and come home. That to me is the kind of evidence that the trauma processing is working, and we're not asking her to forget. We're asking that we can find a way to live with this knowledge, but it not impact us so much that it stops us doing things.
Well, it's definitely working, because that is the point. Because we have to live with the stuff that's happened to us. We have to. You can't not live with it because it's happened to you. It's part of you now. It kind of becomes part of who you are as a person.
Yeah.
But we don't have to always live with the impact. And emotional and the somatic and the behavioural impact.
Yes. And it would have been very easy to say, find a different shopping centre.
Yeah, of course.
And absolutely they did that for a few months.
Yeah.
But that's not trauma processing. That's, in my opinion, just avoiding. And that's not always helpful.
But it also would have been really easy, I think, for a carer who might not have been quite as attuned to say to the girl, stop carrying on.
Yeah, well, that's true too. I didn't think of that.
Stop carrying on. You're safe. Let's just keep going.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It would have been very easy for that to happen too.
Yeah. This is a remarkable carer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For there not to have been that understanding of the reaction.
Yeah.
She actually explored the reaction.
Yeah.
And I think that, absolutely remarkable carer. Okay. I think we should move on to what, Rose? So what healing looks like. All right. So we know that the brain can change because that's around neuroplasticity. Thought I was going to be able to say it.
Plasticity.
Yeah, I thought I was getting calm and say it now. Plasticity. Did I say it?
Yeah.
All right. And it kind of thing is one of the most important discoveries in modern neuroscience, isn't it really, that the brain is not fixed, that things can always be changed.
And we're old enough to remember when this came out.
We're old enough to remember it because before that, prior to that, there was this view that whatever happened between the ages of 0 to 3, where that kind of formed the brain, the neural pathways in the brain, that they were stuck. And you could never change them. You could never shift them.
Yeah.
Which was kind of depressing.
Well, it was. And I think we're not old enough to remember that babies were born with a blank slate.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that was the first one, like the first kind of myth. And then it became that the brain is stuck.
Yes. Yeah.
God, we're old though.
We are. So effective trauma therapies is this process called memory reconsolidation. We've edited out my attempts at saying that word so many times. Okay. Basically what that is that it is teaching the brain to process the memory and all of the things that are attached to that memory.
The feelings.
Feelings, that's the things that are attached to that memory, but also the senses.
Yep.
And the somatic impact.
Yep.
So it's around teaching the brain to explore the memory, explore the impact of the memory, and then develop a narrative that you can actually understand and you can live with. Basically, that's what it means.
Yes.
And that, I think, should be the goal of work that we do.
I would agree.
And whether you are someone who, because I think a lot of people think, but that's a counsellor's role. I actually think, yes, it can be a counsellor's role. It's absolutely a counsellor's role. But it doesn't mean that you can't, depending on what your role is, of course. But if you are in a role where you have a relationship with somebody and it's an over time relationship.
Like a case management role?
Then you can actually help people to still be processing the things that have happened to them. And the way that you would do that is not by actually becoming a therapist. That's not what I'm talking about. But the way that you would do that is by, if someone is actually having intrusive thoughts, if someone is having a flashback, if this trauma, if whatever's happened to them, it still feels so clear and raw and now for them, but it didn't just happen just then or yesterday, then you can, in your role, have a conversation with them about not only what it is that's going on in their brain, but how does it feel? What is the story attached? What's the narrative that's attached? Talk about the narrative.
I would agree. I don't think you need to be a therapist to be therapeutic.
No, maybe that's actually what I was talking about in much better way.
And this, providing a bit of education to clients around memory, around how it, and you can do that. You don't have to do that using the words we've used, but there are so many different ways that you can actually talk to trauma survivors about memory that is helpful for them to then maybe go back to their therapist and ask questions, or if you're in a case manager role, to help them understand what's attached to it, to just be the person that, might ask different questions around, what does it feel like?
What does it feel like?
Yeah.
What is the story that's attached
to it? Let's have a little chat about it.
Let's have a chat about it. What happens when that story comes for you?
Yeah.
What happens to your body? What happens to your brain? What happens to your feelings? What do you do to manage it? Because everyone has ways that they manage it. Let's explore some coping skills.
Yep.
Yep.
I agree.
What do you want? How do you want the story to feel?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
And if, they do have a therapist, is this something you've talked about in therapy?
Yeah.
There are so many different ways you can help people if you're not the therapist.
Yeah.
To help them trauma process.
But I think there, I could be talking out of my ass because I do, but I think there still might be a view that that's the role for the therapist. This is my role. I need to stay in my lane, and you do need to stay in your own lane. But that doesn't mean that like you said it so well. It doesn't mean that it can't be therapeutic.
Yeah.
All right. EMDR actually has some really good outcomes for helping people we know to manage trauma, but also to kind of manage, not even to manage, but to kind of explore memory stuff as well. I don't know enough about EMDR. We talk about this all the time.
We do, because it's one of those therapies that I would love to do. It's just the cost of doing it that stops me from doing that. But I have had a client do an intensive EMDR session, and that was a week-long
remember that
EMDR session. And my kind of take from that was that the recall and the feelings attached, they significantly lessened from that week of intensive EMDR.
I mean, EMDR has some great reviews, like in terms of reviews. I'm talking about research outcomes, but
reviews. I think there are very clear, evidenced, researched outcomes for EMDR, and it's very clear the type of situations where EMDR doesn't work either. So you just have to know what's the purpose of the referral for EMDR. Is there research around that it's effective in this situation?
Yeah.
And if it is, I would say if you've got a very well qualified, experienced EMDR therapist, to not rule it out, because I've actually seen, and especially when first the person said to me, can we think about an intensive EMDR treatment? And I was like, what's that? A week long, 5 days in a row of very intensive EMDR. I thought, is this something we do? Actually, it is. And it was, very helpful.
Wow, that's great. Okay, another therapy that's kind of really good with helping people to explore memories from traumatic events is cognitive processing therapy. And really, the reason that's good is because it actually explores the meaning. It really does what we talked about before. It explores the meaning attached to the memory.
I mean, cognitive, it says it in the term, doesn't it?
It says it all in the term, but it explores the stories that are attached to the meaning.
To the meaning.
Yeah. So it's about, okay, this happened. This is the meaning I took from it, but this is the story I now tell myself because of it. It's my fault. I'm to blame.
Yes.
Blah, blah. And so really, in terms of cognitive processing therapy, you're exploring the meaning, but also the narrative.
The narratives.
And you're trying to shift that.
Yes.
I think that's probably it. I think any good trauma processing therapy really that people will I think any good trauma processing therapy where people have the opportunity to understand what is happening for them and then to explore ways of exploring the story. Explore ways of exploring the story. I know I could have said that much better. I think is going to be useful. All right, I think we're over. I think we're finished.
I think there are heaps of resources, research papers on memory, and hopefully this episode has at least sparked your interest, if you haven't had one before now in memory, to go and have a little bit look deeper. And if you know a lot about memory, maybe it's just reaffirmed everything you knew, or...
I hope so. I hope it's reaffirmed. I hope you haven't been sitting there with your jaw dropped going, those two girls know nothing.
That's possible.
That's possible too. But either way, thank you for listening. All right, that brings us to the end of another episode of Relational Practice, a social work podcast. We hope today's discussion was valuable for your practice. Oh, do you want me to do this?
To ensure you're always in the loop, please follow our podcast. Your subscription and social media engagement helps us build our community and helps other people find these conversations that we think are really important for practice. Thanks for tuning in today. Stay safe and remember to always practice relationally. Well, I stuffed that up. Thanks for listening and we'll see you next time.
See you later. Bye.
But maybe someday